The jet sliced through the midnight clouds as Adrian Hale leaned back in his leather seat, staring out at the glittering city below. Home. After 3 relentless months of negotiations in Zurich and Tokyo, he had imagined stepping through his front doors to the warmth of familiarity, Sophia waiting with that serene smile that always made the world feel less cold. He had even brought her a small gift, a delicate sapphire necklace tucked inside his coat pocket, chosen because it matched her eyes. But the moment the jet's wheels touched the runway, a quiet unease crept into him. It was subtle at first, a whisper in the back of his mind, the kind he usually ignored. Adrian was a man of precision, logic, and structure. Intuition rarely factored into his decisions. Yet tonight, something felt off. The drive from the airport was unusually slow. Rain drizzled over the windshield, blurring the city lights into smudges of gold. Adrian watched them absently, tapping his thumb against his knee. Every minute felt heavier than the last. By the time the car pulled up in front of his mansion, the unease had rooted itself firmly. The house stood silent, too silent. No welcoming glow from the foyer. No footsteps rushing to the door. No soft hum of music. Sophia always left music playing when she knew he was coming home. Adrian stepped out of the car slowly, scanning every window. Not a single light was on. He tried telling himself it meant nothing. Maybe she fell asleep. Maybe she went to visit her friend Emily. Maybe. Mr. Hale, his head of security, approached cautiously. The staff reported Mrs. Hale hasn't been seen since late afternoon. A cold spike stabbed through his chest. What do you mean, not seen? Adrian's voice was calm, but each word was razor sharp. We tried calling her, sir. Her phone is off. Off. Sophia never turned her phone off. Not even at night. Not even during spa sessions. Adrian moved quickly into the house, calling her name. His footsteps echoed through the marble halls, bouncing off the vast emptiness. Her coat was missing. Her purse was gone. But her car was still in the garage. Then his security chief spoke again, voice tense. We tracked her last phone signal. It pinged in the old industrial district. Adrian froze. That area was abandoned, unsafe, and a place Sophia had no reason, none, to go. His heart began to pound, not with fear, but with a rising, unfamiliar dread. Get the car, he ordered, already striding toward the door. We go now. For the first time in years, the man who controlled billions felt truly powerless. And as the car sped into the night, one truth settled over him. Whatever waited for him in that district, it would change everything. The industrial district lay on the outskirts of the city like a forgotten wound. Rows of rusted warehouses, shattered windows, graffiti-covered walls, and streets illuminated only by dying street lamps that buzzed weakly in the damp night air. As Adrian's car turned the final corner, the headlights swept across puddles of rainwater, metal scraps, and stray newspaper pages fluttering like ghosts. Stop, Adrian said suddenly. The car hadn't even fully halted before he stepped out, the rain soaking through his tailored suit almost instantly. He didn't care. His eyes were locked on the blinking icon on the tracker, Sophia's last known location. It led him deeper into the narrow alley wedged between 2 abandoned factories. Each step echoed sharply, his polished shoes splashing through muddy water. The air was thick with the smell of rust, oil, and something else, something metallic, something wrong. Adrian's breathing quickened. Sophia, he called, the name cracking through the silence. No answer, only the hum of the distant highway. He walked further, hands trembling, not from the cold, but from the terror building in his chest. His whole life, Adrian had been a man of control. But now, he could feel it slipping from him, unraveling thread by thread with every step. And then he saw her. At first it didn't feel real. A slumped figure, barely visible under the flickering light of an old lamp. Her hair tangled, her clothes torn, one shoe missing. Her hands scraped and bruised as if she had tried to crawl. Sophia, Adrian whispered, the world narrowing to nothing but her fragile body. He ran. This time not with the calm precision of a businessman, but with the desperation of a man whose entire world was breaking apart. When he reached her, he fell to his knees so hard it echoed off the alley walls. He wrapped his coat around her instantly, pulling her close to shield her from the cold rain. Her skin was icy, her breathing shallow. Sophia, sweetheart, look at me, he pleaded, voice trembling. I'm here now. You're safe. Her eyelids fluttered weakly. She tried to focus on him, her lips trembling as though forming a word that never fully came. A soft, broken sound escaped her. A sob, a gasp, maybe both. Adrian cupped her face gently. Who did this to you? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Tell me, Sophia, please. But she only shook her head, tears mixing with the rain as her body went limp against his chest. Adrian turned toward his security team, eyes burning, not with tears, but with a rage so dark it frightened even the men who had worked beside him for a decade. Call an ambulance, he ordered, his voice deep and cold. And find out who touched her. He lifted Sophia into his arms, holding her as if she might break. The rain poured harder, drenching them both, but Adrian didn't move until he was certain she was breathing steadily against him. In that dim alley, he made a silent promise. Whoever did this, whoever thought they could use his wife as a pawn, would learn what it meant to provoke Adrian Hale. And the city would never forget it. The hospital corridors buzzed with quiet urgency, nurses pushing carts, doctors discussing scans, the beeping of distant machines echoing through cold, sterile air. But for Adrian, everything felt muffled, as though he were submerged underwater. His entire focus was fixed on the small ICU room where Sophia lay. He stood just outside the glass, hands gripping the metal railing so tightly his knuckles were bone white. Rainwater still clung to his hair and clothes, but he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. Every time he exhaled, it felt like a piece of his soul cracked. Inside, doctors worked quickly. One checked Sophia's oxygen, another documented bruises, a third adjusted the IV drip. Exhaustion, dehydration, signs of physical struggle, he overheard. But no life-threatening injuries. Adrian closed his eyes, relief washing over him so hard it almost knocked him off balance. She would live. She would recover. That was enough. For now. A soft voice approached from behind. Mr. Hale. He turned. The lead physician, Dr. Rowan, stood with a clipboard, his expression grave but steady. Your wife is stable, he began. She's suffered trauma, both physical and emotional. She needs rest, safety, and time. But she's a strong woman. Adrian nodded, swallowing hard. His voice came out low, controlled. When can I see her? In a few minutes. She's waking up. Those words crushed the air out of him. He pressed a hand against the glass, staring at her unmoving figure. He had never felt more helpless, or more determined. When they finally allowed him inside, Adrian stepped quietly into the room, afraid even the sound of his heartbeat might disturb her. Sophia lay still, her hair brushed off her face by the nurses, a blanket tucked around her. The bruises on her arms stood out painfully against her pale skin. He pulled a chair close and took her hand gently, afraid to hurt her. Sophia, sweetheart, I'm here. Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, she opened her eyes. The moment she saw him, tears filled them. Adrian. Her voice was barely a whisper, cracked and fragile. He leaned closer. You're safe now. I've got you. She swallowed, her throat dry. He didn't mean to go that far. He just wanted information. About your company. About the merger. Adrian's jaw tightened. Who? Sophia hesitated, fear flickering across her battered face. Evan, she whispered. Evan Cross. Your partner. Silence slammed into the room. Adrian's heartbeat stilled. His breath stopped. Evan. His closest associate. The man he trusted with billion-dollar decisions. The man he had defended countless times. Ice spread through his veins. Sophia gripped his hand weakly. He said you'd thank him someday. That he was just forcing your hand. Adrian's expression shifted, not with shock, but with something far colder. A deep, controlled fury sharpened his features into stone. I want you to rest, he said softly, brushing her forehead. You're safe now, I promise. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. Adrian, don't do anything reckless. But it was too late. A switch had flipped inside him. Adrian Hale was not a man who shouted. He didn't break things. He didn't threaten. His anger was silent, precise, and merciless. He kissed her forehead gently, stood up, and looked at the doctor. Keep her safe. No one comes near this room without my authorization. Then he stepped into the hallway, pulling out his phone. Get me everything, he told his head of security. Every file, every record, every mistake Evan Cross has ever made in his life. His voice was calm, deadly calm. The city had no idea what was coming. The sun had barely risen when the city began buzzing, unaware that within the next hour, every news screen, every phone, every social feed would erupt with the biggest corporate scandal in years. While the world stretched awake, Adrian Hale had already been up all night, working, digging, assembling a case so airtight it would strangle the man who dared touch his wife. In a private conference room inside his corporate headquarters, the atmosphere was electric. Adrian stood at the head of a long glass table, surrounded by his most trusted security analysts and legal experts. Their eyes were glued to the wall-sized screen displaying years of quietly archived data, evidence Adrian had been collecting long before this night. He had always suspected Evan wasn't clean. But now, with Sophia's bruised face burned into his memory, Adrian was done being patient. Is everything verified? He asked, voice cold as steel. Yes, sir, one analyst replied. Financial laundering, offshore accounts, bribery, shell corporations, falsified reports, it's all here. Including the surveillance footage from last night. Adrian watched the clip he'd been dreading to see, Evan's men dragging Sophia from a black SUV into the alley. The camera caught everything, her struggle, their threats. The moment she collapsed, his jaw tightened, but he remained eerily composed. Good, he said softly. Send it to every major outlet, every investor, every board member, every rival company, and directly to the police commissioner. The room fell silent. They all knew what this meant. This was not a corporate battle. This was war. Within 20 minutes, the city exploded. News anchors scrambled to go live. Massive corruption scandal involving Evan Cross. Shocking footage of an abduction. Adrian Hale releases evidence. Phones buzzed in offices, living rooms, universities, and taxis. Social media feeds flooded with videos, statements, screenshots, documents. The public watched in disbelief as one of the city's most influential executives was exposed as a criminal mastermind. Evan Cross awoke to pounding on his penthouse door, cameras flashing through the hallway windows. Police officers surrounded him. What the hell is going on? He shouted as he stumbled out in shock. You're under arrest for abduction, conspiracy, fraud, and assault, an officer recited. What? Who did this? A reporter held up her phone showing Adrian's video statement. Evan's face crumbled. Meanwhile, Adrian was back at the hospital, stepping into Sophia's room with gentle, quiet steps. She was awake, propped up on pillows, watching the news coverage with wide, trembling eyes. Adrian, she whispered. He sat beside her, taking her hand. I promised I'd protect you. Her eyes filled with tears again, this time not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. You didn't have to destroy him, she said softly. I didn't, Adrian replied calmly. He destroyed himself. I simply held up the mirror. Outside the hospital window, people gathered in the streets, applauding Adrian's courage. Headlines praised him. Commentators analyzed him. The city hailed him a hero. But to Adrian, none of that mattered. He wasn't thinking about the merger. He wasn't thinking about the headlines. He wasn't thinking about the empire he had just shaken. He looked only at Sophia. At her healing face. At her trembling hand in his. At the life he almost lost. From now on, he whispered, brushing her cheek, no one will ever come near you again. Not while I breathe. Sophia leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time in days. Outside, the city roared. Inside, Adrian made a silent vow. The man who had returned home yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone far more dangerous. And the world would remember his name.